Hey guys, we're back with another episode 3 of the Indie Talk series, back from a decade or so ago. For episode 3, we decided to talk with a guy named Eric Ruth, who has been making games for a while at that point. The indies haven't really popped off yet at this time, in the mainstream, I should say, but there were a lot of people doing a lot of cool little projects online, and Eric Ruth was one of those guys. He's done so many things online. It's actually crazy. But he kind of got his real big start in 2008 when he made an angry video game nerd video game. I believe it was even called the Angry Video Game Nerd, the Angry Video Game. And it was just an NES platforming type thing that you could download and play. It was featured on an AVGN video, which got him a lot of people playing it and talking about it or whatever. But even besides that, he did a bunch of other stuff. He did a game called Mega Man Rocks, which was a Mega Man type fan game. He did a series called Pixel Force, where he took like big game titles and kind of made them NES versions of them. The big ones at that time were, I think, Left 4 Dead, DJ Hero, and the most recent at that time was Halo and Team Fortress, I believe, from when we talked to him here. But yeah, super nice guy, super cool dude. Just been doing stuff for a long time. It doesn't seem like he's been releasing many things recently, and it's hard to find him on socials, but he still does have a site up if you want to go and check out all of those games. He has them all available, or at least links to them. And he also has like his contact information and all that sort of thing at ericruthgames.weebly.com. So yeah, maybe check that stuff out and enjoy the listen.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Paul with Pixel Response, as always, and I have my buddy Nathan here with me.
Greetings.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the enthusiasm.
Salutations.
More importantly, we have Eric. I'm sorry, is it Ruth or Ruth?
It's Ruth, just like the candy bar and the baseball player.
Okay, cool. I just didn't want to be presumptuous and just call you the wrong thing for the next half hour or whatever, so... Anybody that has been around the internet knows the Angry Video Game Nerd, the Angry Video Game, or any of the Pixel Force games he's done. You probably have seen his stuff around YouTube. There's quite a few Let's Plays of his stuff around, but unfortunately nobody ever seems to give the proper credit. But I guess that's neither here nor there. So how's it going?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. It's getting a little chilly up here, but it's pretty warm today, so...
It's getting a little chilly in Canada, you say?
Yeah, I know. Like, stop the presses, right? Yeah.
It said the temperature's dying down here, too. I'm on the east coast of the U.S., and in Virginia, more specifically, just south of the nation's capital, and it's starting to cool down here, too. So, but when it starts to cool down here, the weather becomes nice. I assume when it cools down up there, it becomes frigid.
It becomes kind of nasty, yeah, especially where we are. We're kind of landlocked, so it gets dry when it's hot or cold.
That's actually good news, man. Over here, since we're right like on the Chesapeake Bay, it gets really humid in the summer, like painfully humid. And yeah, I'd kill to live anywhere with dry heat or dry, cool air because it gets really bad in the summer. During the winter and fall and stuff, it's okay, but in the summer, it really blows.
Yeah, the grass is always greener, I guess, though, because we always get like migraines or headaches from the dryness and the weird changes from...
I don't know. A permanent deep sweat sounds terrible, so I'm not sure if I want to...
Yes, that is the summer here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw that TV show with the zombies. They're around there, so they're sweating a lot.
They're in Atlanta, though, aren't they?
Yeah, Walking Dead?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like southern mid-America.
Oh, okay. It's a little further. Okay.
Yeah, he's from where Eno's from, Nathan.
Oh, okay. Is that near MagFest? That's all I'm thinking right now.
Yes, I'm a regular guest at MagFest for the past
Okay.
10 years now.
We've been debating going this year. I think it's going to happen.
I think so.
Well, I'll be there, so if you guys are going,
Cool.
you'll see me around.
Has it been slowly growing? Like, how big is it now? Like,
The first MagFest I went to, which was 2004, I think, was that was 200 people, and had like 3 girls were there. And I was in the 200 people, 3 girls. And now it's thousands. I want to say like based on last year's attendance, I think they're expecting like 9,000 people this year.
okay.
Oh, wow.
So
Do they
it's
showcase, like, it's music and games, but do they kind of showcase indie development a lot, or is it more kind of just people playing tournaments of fighting games and stuff? And, what happens?
The con used to be broken into like sections, but they've kind of plastered them all together, so there's nothing that really separates them now. There was a LAN room, which is where people would there were like Team Fortress 2 tournaments and Quake tournaments, that kind of stuff, StarCraft 2. And then you had the arcade room, which is a shit ton of old school stand-up arcade cabinets, including some pretty rare ones like the infamous 6-man X-Men arcade.
Right.
Stuff like that. And then they had a section that was specifically for people distributing or vending. And then there was an area with indie games, which is where I mostly set up. They also have like the panel rooms and stuff too, but every con's got that. Well, this year they kind of morphed everything into, there's like 2 big auditoriums that merged together. And within those 2 auditoriums is like everything except for panel rooms. So MagFest has really been condensed to basically one giant hall, which has its ups and downs. But this past year they didn't stick the indie people together. They kind of peppered us about, which I was fine with. I mean, there was no problem with it, but it didn't kind of funnel anyone to a specific area if they wanted to learn more about indie stuff. So I don't know. They might change it this year. I don't really have any idea what they're going to do. I usually just get an email 2 months before, and they're like, here's what you're doing. Here's where you're at. Have fun.
Okay. But, like, the climate, like, the atmosphere at the con is really good. I've heard really good things about the enthusiasm there.
MagFest used to be really phenomenal, and this past year, to be completely honest, and not to take anything away from it, because it's great, and everybody that works on it are just wonderful people, but it's starting to feel less like a gamers convention and more just like a general anime convention now. Over the years, it's grown in size, and of course, as things grow in size, they become more, what's the word I'm looking for? They just kind of
generalized, or
yeah, exactly. They generalize, cater to an everyday audience, and
so it's kind of losing that identity it had, or
like MagFest 4, for example, was a good MagFest where you didn't really see cosplayers or anything like that, because that's more of like an anime convention thing. You didn't see costume contests or Pocky salesmen or anything like that on the floor. You didn't see people selling animes of DVDs of anime or anything like that. So, you didn't see that. But this past year you did a lot. So it's starting to become more anime convention-y, which the identity of MagFest was that it was completely a gamers convention. And, you want an anime, you go to an anime con. And if you want gaming, you come to MagFest. But I feel it's losing that. And I think that's going to negatively impact it in terms of quality. I mean, in size, number of people, it's growing every year. But I've also spoken to several of the old MagFest guests, people who've been around for 10 years like myself. And everyone seems to feel pretty similarly about it. So we'll see where they go.
Yeah, that just seems to be a thing that happens with size. Like, all conventions run into that problem eventually. But like, do you get to travel around to other conventions and stuff? Do you have some favorites, or?
I try to get out when I can, but I only go to conventions where they completely 100% cover me, because I don't have the funds to go blowing on these half-country trips every couple of months.
Right. Okay.
Because, I mean, that adds up. If you're a kind of person that does convention hopping, there's like one every month you can go to. And, put travel costs and hotel and food. And God, that's expensive 12 months a year,
Yeah, we're starting to feel that pinch here a bit.
Yeah, we are.
Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially
I'm looking forward to all of the ones we get to go to. But
and, like, PAX East is, like, 2 months or something, like, right after MagFest. It's gross. It gets pretty bad. And then that same month is ours here in Calgary.
Right.
What do you guys have up in Calgary?
It's called the Calgary Entertainment and Comic Expo.
Or Comic and Entertainment, something like that, yeah. Like, our big thing this year was we had the Star Trek Next Generation cast, so everyone was excited.
And I got locked out.
And you did get locked out, because the fire marshal shut the whole place down. There were too many people there. Too many fans.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Actually, this weekend, the Edmonton Expo is going on, which is only about 3 hours away, so we'll see what happens there, I guess.
Yeah, same people managing it, but okay.
Maybe they learned a lesson or two, though.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, how did you get into indie game making and development and all that sort of thing?
Well, when I was a kid, I had a Nintendo like a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved video games like a whole lot more than most people. Back when video game playing wasn't socially acceptable. Back when if you played games, you were a nerd.
Yeah.
And it was sort of... So
like
when
an
I was...
arcade
Like,
still existed and everything.
yes.
Yeah.
Way back during that time. Because remember, I'm 31 now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I got my Nintendo back in 86, 87, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And... So when I hung out with friends, my friends were all also video game nerds because you didn't hang out with people that didn't play video games. That was, nowadays everyone plays games to some degree, whether it be, Angry Birds on your phone or, Plants vs. Zombies on your computer or, Halo on your Xbox. It doesn't matter. But back then, it was a much smaller group of people and you basically just gravitated toward each other, much like any other, clique in school. But I always loved games. And I decided when I was like 10 that I was going to make video games when I grew up. And that was it. That was what I was going to do. End of story. And so I wound up studying things. And, when I got to my teenage years, the internet had just really started coming into its own. And it started offering little things you could read about on game development, blogs from some of the people who have been in the industry for a while. And as time went on, all these resources became more and more and more available. So, I mean, nowadays, if you wanted to start making video games now, there's so much available from tutorials on YouTube to, downloaded examples from various products, free engines like the light version of Game Maker or, God, what else is free these days? Oh, most everything is free for trials these days.
Yeah.
And, I mean...
Like I just picked up a Unity trial, but I haven't activated it yet.
But Unity's free altogether, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think there's a free tier of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a licensing. So if you sell something for a certain amount of money, I think you have to officially license it. But until you hit that mark, I think it's free.
Yeah, same with the Unreal development kit too.
Yeah, but that, just reinforces what I'm saying is that it's so easy now.
Mm-hmm.
And I started when it was less easy, so it required a little more effort. But it's the same route pretty much anyone else would take. I wanted to work on projects, and I tried to get friends to help me. Every friend wants to make games. You go, hey, yeah, you want to make a game with me? And everyone's response is, yeah. But then when it comes down to how much work is involved, most people just walk out the back door pretty early. So
right.
That I just needed to learn how to make games myself because I couldn't rely on anybody else to see a project through to the end. So I taught myself coding and art and animation and music, sound effects, recording, QA, testing, debugging, and I eventually just made my own stuff.
Okay, so It's been primarily just you. You haven't really been collaborating much with anybody.
No, it's 98% of the time it's just me. On a rare occasion, I'll collaborate with someone on something specific, like a game I released this past year called Coral Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
The music was done by Midnight Syndicate, which is these couple guys that do like haunted music, and they've done soundtracks for movies and video games, and I showed them some demos of the game. I said, your guys' music would be great for it. I'd really love to use it. What do you think? They responded back. They said, yeah, it's beautiful. We love the game. Sure, you can use the music. We did a revenue splitting deal, bada boom. There you go. So they were great to work with. But typically I do the music myself. That was just a case of, I thought they were really talented and, I thought their music could bring something to the work. So I took them over writing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, with so many facets that you had to learn by yourself and kind of working by yourself on so many games, I'm looking at some of your game list here, and the turnaround time on these seems insane for someone doing all the work. So I'm just wondering what, your process is, kind of.
About 12 hours a day at work, 7 days a week.
Yeah, okay, because, just from your site here, I have a list of some of your games. Like, you have one from January 2008, one from February 2008, July 2008, August 2008. Like, you have one almost every couple of months here.
It depends on the project too, because I'm usually working on like 2 projects at a time, and sometimes it'll line up where they'll come out back to back. But most of the time, it's game's average length for me is 3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Depending on the project, of course, it really fluctuates. I've done games. I think the longest I ever did was 5 months, and the shortest was 3 days.
Right.
So, I mean, it can really vary, but the average seems to be about 3 to 4 months.
The first game I have listed here is Return of the Space Cowboy. Was that your first major release?
Yeah, it was my first actual release by myself, where I worked. You know, when I made that decision where I was like, screw it, I'm going to learn everything I need to learn. I'm going to make a game myself. Screw relying on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first product, which was an original game.
How do you feel about that now, looking back on it? Because that's about 4 years now.
Oh, it's longer than that. What was that? 2000.
It's almost 5 years now.
Almost 5, yeah.
God. I always tell myself that I like the characters and that, quote unquote franchise enough to do more with it, like either some sequels or, cause it actually has there's a sequel to it that's up and available for download.
Right.
But I always thought about going back and redoing it with like HD graphics, doing everything with like hand-drawn art just for funsies, because the game concept was easy and simple and not bad. It was, it was fine. I didn't know a lot about game making at the time internally, so there's a lot of problems with it that really need to be just like cleaned up. But if I go back and redid it now, again, updating it, I really think the end project of that could be really good. But I don't have time for it at the moment. But maybe in the next year or 2.
Cool. Well, one of the games that actually led me on to who you were to begin with is I'm a big Angry Video Game Nerd fan.
James.
Yeah.
What a delightful man he is.
Yeah, so I saw your game, and the fact that he does a voiceover commentary as you play is kind of a neat idea, especially like back, well, like you said, about almost 5 years now.
Yeah.
What was it like to work with him anyway?
Well, James and I did very little work together. Essentially what happened was I came up with the idea for the game. I thought it would be really cool to do an Angry Video Game Nerd game where the idea was you're playing like a cheesy old school side scroller with him commentating as you went, like he's watching and playing with you. And then the idea became, well, why don't I make the game about him, and then he could commentate on himself being in the game. I wound up emailing him about it. He said it sounded neat, but he gets a lot of requests from fans to do like Angry Video Game Nerd games. Mm-hmm. He's never seen anything come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And this harkens back to people always want to make a game until they realize it's a lot of work and then they, jump out. But I said, all right, well, I'll tell you what, I got this idea. I'm going to put it together. If I bring you a finished product outside of like the audio and sound, will you record audio and sound for it? And he said, yeah, if you finish it like as an actual game, I'll record whatever you want for audio. I said, okay, that's fair. So I finished it and I turned it over to him. He actually has a Mac. He doesn't have a PC, or at least he didn't then. So he couldn't ever play my games because they were for PC and not Mac. So what I had to do is I had to record me playing through the game and send him these hidden YouTube videos, one for each stage. And he just sat down with his mic and just talked over all the videos. So I got like an hour and a half's worth of audio from him and then cut it down to like 3 minutes because he had no idea what to say because he mentioned, he's like, I didn't know what to do or say. Most of these things, when I do videos, I write scripts and things and, I just did this on the fly. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I'm sorry if the quality of the audio stuff isn't very good, but there were some great pieces that I remember he did for us and, or me, excuse me. And, particularly, I keep remembering this one because he said a lot of things, and he'd like in the middle of his audio, he'd be like, "That's stupid. Why did I say that?" And like you could hear him like making mad at himself for recording something dumb. And like the water shark thing was my favorite. The boss of stage 2 is a submarine shark, which is what he meant to say. And he says, "Oh, look, a water shark." And you hear him pause with the realization. He goes, "I guess all sharks are water sharks." Like you could hear the disappointment in himself in his voice. So I kept that clip and put it in the final game because I thought it was just too funny. But I mean, he made good. He got back to me real quick, gave me all the audio I needed. I asked him if he could record a video for the end of the game, of him like he had just beaten the game. And he did that and he gave me the video and, Little piece of nerd trivia, by the way, for you guys. That video at the very end of the game is the only time in Angry Video Game Nerd history he forgot to take his wedding ring off his finger for a nerd video.
Oh, wow.
So he's actually married to a woman named April, no less, who's very sweet.
Right.
And that's the only time in any of his nerd videos ever where you can see him wearing his wedding ring.
Oh, weird. So that was back in February, it looks like. How long did that take you to create?
Not long at all. That game was... I purposefully didn't spend tons of time on different things because I wanted it to feel like it had that rushed, shitty game feel.
Right.
So I tried to be as authentic in that as possible by making the weapons hard to use, enemies impossible to kill, stages poorly designed. I mean...
So you purposefully made an LJN game?
Yeah, I purposely made a shitty game. With the
okay.
only exception being the music. I actually spent time on the music, and I thought the soundtrack came out pretty good. But everything else was a rush job on purpose.
What was the response to that game like? Because he has quite the fan base.
Well, it was the first game that put me on the map.
Right.
I got a lot of positive feedback from it. A lot of questions, a lot of, I still get fan mail on occasion where people will ask for a sequel. But I'd have to, if I was going to do a sequel, I'd work closer with James on that. And James and I aren't like good friends or anything. He just agreed to do that project with me, and he wound up playing, because he goes to MagFest every year.
Yeah.
In his first year at MagFest, he came up to me and asked me if he could play it, and I put it on, and because I had a table set up with TVs and monitors and stuff, and I put it on, and he and April came over and sat down, and he played it, and he did very poorly and kept laughing every time he died.
Right on.
I don't know much about him in real life. I mean, I see him at the conventions, and every year I'll say hi, and he'll say hi back, but he comes off as kind of a stoner. He always seems a little out of it.
Is a sequel something you would be interested in actually doing, like, in the future?
I'd do it, but again, I'd have to do it, like, with him. I'd have to come up with something that, he really liked. I'm not just going to throw an idea together again. I'd have to be like, hey, James, you want to do something? If he's like, yeah, why don't we do this? I'd be like, all right, I'll put some effort into that.
Right.
But I'm not going to do anything on my own with it.
Right. So one of my second favorite things is I'm a big fan of the Mega Man games. And you did a game called Mega Man Rocks.
Yep.
Which is basically, I'm guessing they're all your original Robot Masters with Mega Man gameplay, like the engine that Mega Man is?
I rebuilt the engine from scratch. A lot of people thought it was a ROM hack, but I rebuilt everything from scratch. And that's actually an example of a game I wish I could be more proud of, but the programming in it is just awful.
Oh.
I was still learning a lot. That was an early game for me. But, there's really not much to say. It's another game I like the soundtrack for, by the way. I did a good job, I think, with the soundtrack to that game. But past that...
oh, you did the soundtrack for that, too?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, that was a game I did 100% of the work for.
Okay, yeah. I really like the soundtrack for that game, so I didn't know that. Huh, okay. Now, were you working on Mega Man HD?
Yeah, I was working on Mega Man 9 HD.
9 HD, okay, because I had talked to someone years ago named, oh my god, what's his name? Adam Delsend, or something like that? And he was working on a Mega Man HD back in, like, the late 2000s here, probably about 2009-ish. And he was saying he was running into some, like, copyright problems and stuff, as in Capcom told him not to do that anymore. Have you ever run into anything like that?
Because I do a lot of fan games, I always worry about, who's going to come and try and shut me down. I've been very lucky. I've only been actually shut down once, by a company. Everyone else has always liked my work. And in fact, I have a great relationship with Valve now. Valve are apparently big fans of mine. I got some stuff in the works now, but Pixel Force DJ Hero was shut down by Universal Music. Right. Because of copyrights on songs, even though I didn't use the original songs.
Yeah, I noticed that on some YouTube clips I was looking at. There was some discussion about that in the comments, so, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that brings me to your Pixel Force games. So, like, what was the idea if you're just kind of recreating games, I'm guessing, that you liked in retro style? Well,
yeah, there were lots of... I have a feeling that And, some people I talk to seem to agree with me and some don't. But games, generally, when it comes to gameplay, kind of used to be better back in the day. When, on the Nintendo and the Genesis and so forth, they couldn't push graphical limitations like they do now. So they didn't focus on graphics. They focused on gameplay. Because back then, during the era of Mega Man and Castlevania, you really weren't going to sell a lot of games by graphics alone because the systems were so limited. So they had to be good, especially back when there was no internet and, game review guides were kind of expensive. And, when you went to the store to buy a video game, you were kind of taking a shot in the dark as to whether or not it was going to be good. So word of mouth was a big thing back then. A game had to be fun or, it was just never going to do well. So I feel like games were, by the percentile, there were more good games back in the day than there are now, where stuff just gets released in shit waves. And then, the ones we remember are like the one every 2 years, for the, the Amnesias and the Portals and the stuff that comes out, very randomly. Whereas back then I felt like it was more often.
To some extent, yeah, I guess I'd agree with, like, some modern games lean really hard on just graphical spectacle, so it's guiding you down a path. If you really look at what you're doing, you're kind of walking down a hallway and things are exploding.
Like Crysis.
But, yeah, well, Crysis had some open world elements, but I'm specifically thinking of, like, some Call of Duty type stuff and other shooters I've been playing lately that guide you.
That's essentially...
Yeah, they strip out that gameplay in favor of looking super cool, like a movie or something, and at the end of it, though, you kind of just forget. Like, you don't go back to it because there's nothing there to really dig into.
Yeah, there's no substance. It's all flair.
Yeah.
So, you did... Sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
I'm just trying to think. There was specifically a game recently where I had that sensation, but I've forgotten about it already. That shows
Spec Ops?
There you go.
Oh, Spec Ops, yeah, to some extent. It was kind of guiding me a little too much. But okay, never mind. Let's return to old school discussion.
So with Pixel Force, the one that stands out to me right away is Left 4 Dead.
That was my first Pixel Force game.
Right, and that's one of my favorite Valve games. So Left 4 Dead is generally a 4-player game. And you didn't make it 4-player in your version, right?
No, just 2-player. Just
2-player. So is there a specific reason behind that?
Yeah, it was the vast majority of Nintendo games were, if they were multiplayer, were 2-player games. Mm-hmm. People, when they were trying to argue counter to that, they go, why didn't you make it 4-player? Well, because the Nintendo, vast majority of multiplayer games were 2-player. Like, yeah, there were 4-player games. So, yeah, but there weren't 4-player games until the 90s because the multi-tap wasn't invented until 1990, I think, is when it came out. So 4-player games didn't really exist at that point. And 4-player, then would exist in game systems from then on with limited problem. But the 8-bit era, you didn't really see it. And all of my games that I do Pixel Force, I specifically aim for the year 1989 is the year because it covers a big history of game stuff for me to reference from, while still leaving open the possible future of incorporating better things in case I do sequels and such. And in 1989, 2-player was where it was at, so that's why it was chosen.
So when you say you look back on, like, 1989, will you just reference a bunch of games that came out from that era, kind of compare it, and just be like, no, they wouldn't have had this, so that's coming out?
Or, like, mechanics and stuff from things that predate that? Or okay.
Yeah, no, that's the idea, is that I built it as if the game came out in 1989. Like, completely ignoring the future, and it's just, that's how I build the game. Because if I don't pick a point, like a line, a definitive line, well, then I can sway anywhere I want.
Right.
I can, why limit the color palette? Why limit the channels of sound? I can do anything if I want to just be very flimsy with the line. But I set myself the line because I go, okay, this is what was possible in 1989 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then I build it off of that.
So do you find it easier working with a set restriction than freely?
It's just more fun. I find it way more fun to how a lot of people feel like they're the most creative at the 0 hour, like right before, they'll wait till the day before a test to study, or they'll wait for the night, before something's due to write an entire paper.
Nathan,
it's the same idea.
I just had that experience a couple weeks ago, actually. But yeah, okay. I wrote 3 essays in 1 week, but for that exact reason. It
But
forces you into a corner, and then you have to come out swinging in order to do something. Yeah, I gotcha.
Right on.
So it's fun.
So, of the Pixel Force games, which is your favorite one?
Of the Pixel Force games, I might actually say Halo.
Okay.
Pixel Force Halo came out really well.
Right.
I think it was a solid project. It was good. It wasn't super long, because Pixel Force Left 4 Dead was really long.
Mm-hmm.
To beat that game from beginning to end, it's like 2.5 hours.
Oh, really?
For a Nintendo game, that's really long.
Yeah, that is quite long.
But Halo you can knock out in like half an hour, So that's more attuned to the original days of Nintendo.
Was that the funnest one for you to work on, too?
No, I think probably the most fun was Pixel Force DJ Hero, but again, just because of the soundtrack, I love doing the mixing of the various, trying to recreate sound effects using only the 4 channels of sound.
Right.
The songs, mashups. It was an interesting experience, and it was a lot of fun to do all the music work for that.
I have to ask, how does DJ Hero play with the sliders or whatever?
The original one?
No, your Pixel Force one.
Well, it kind of mimics the original controller, which is you've got 2 buttons, which are representative of B and A.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's buttons that you'll tap, and as they scroll forward, much like any other music or rhythm game, you tap them when they cross the line that they're supposed to. And then when it comes to scratching, or so to speak, then you have to hold the button that corresponds with the color on screen, and then press up and down to scratch as directed. A lot of people actually wrote to me and said, "Hey, there's a bug with your game where I can't scratch." And no, it's not a bug with the game. You just have to know how to play the game. You have to hold, because people were just trying to press up and down without holding, B or A, depending on which color it was.
Right. Okay, I guess that brings us to Team Fortress Arcade, is the last one I have on my list here. So you were saying you have quite a decent relationship with Valve. I guess I could see why with Left 4 Dead and Team Fortress Arcade. It seems like stuff they would be into. So what was the idea behind Team Fortress Arcade?
Well, I was a huge Team Fortress fan at that point. I mean, I was playing competitively. I was shoutcasting with people doing with X-Time Television. I mean, it was I even played in the celebrity tournament with I was on the team with Robin Walker, the creator of Team Fortress, and got the Yogscast guys. Anyways, it was a big TF2 fan. Still am, but I mean, at the time I was really into it. And I just came up with the idea of doing a sort of a side-scroller beat-em-up, but with shooting rather than punching, and then taking that into a multi-tiered level type of game. Mm-hmm. And that's how it came about. And I wound up cranking that out in 3 months, I think.
Right. What differentiates this? I see it's not part of the Pixel Force.
Because Pixel Force is specifically Nintendo-styled games.
Right, okay.
Team Fortress Arcade was designed to be an arcade game. It didn't have a limit on color or sound or anything like that.
Right. And it's
or rather, its limit was much higher, I should say.
Right. And it is a 4-player game?
Yes, that is a 4-player game.
Okay, cool.
Because again, a lot of arcade game beat-em-ups were 4-player back then. So.
Right, for sure. What type of restrictions did you put on yourself? Did you look at arcade games and just see what they would have done in certain situations when you were making that one?
Yeah, a little bit, because I was a big fan of Streets of Rage and Final Fight when I was younger. So I already had a lot of inspiration to draw off of in that genre, because I really loved those games. Right. Especially Final Fight. I owned it for Super Nintendo, and I used to play all the time, and Hagar was one of my favorite video game characters at the time. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of personal inspiration to draw off of when designing that game, so it was relatively easy to put together in terms of knowing what I wanted to do and bringing it to light.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of curious, you obviously have a lot of love for that previous generation of games. Do you play current stuff at all, or are you kind of just that period is the best period? Okay.
I still think, for the most part, that period is the best period, which is late 80s, early 90s. But
right,
yeah,
but you're kind of blending new stuff with that time period, so you're still kind of keeping up on stuff to look for things you could reduce down to their meat and potatoes for the old school approach, kind of? Or
Always a possibility. I mean, like every one of those games that got remade into something Pixel Force were games I liked. I wouldn't have done them if I didn't love the original property. So, for a long time, Halo was my favorite first-person shooter, and I really loved arcade beat-em-ups. So there's where TF Arcade came from. And DJ Hero, I thought, was a great twist on the music game genre, which had so many games that were really just cut and paste of each other. But DJ Hero tried. So those are all games I did that on purpose because I do find new stuff that comes out that I do really like, and would be happy to do something old school with. And again, I don't really want to say what it is yet because I don't really know a lot of details at this point. But it looks like you will also have another modern day game that will be getting a retro fit from me with OK from the original company in the not too distant future.
Cool.
Right.
Have you looked into kind of mobile development at all for any of these, or are you happy with kind of just PC releasing there?
Well, I'm happy with PC, but I work with some other companies now that insist that I need to get into the mobile market. So yes, I do have a game in the works right now that will be a mobile game, mobile release, hopefully at the end of the year. If not, then shortly, into the new year. But yeah, so mobile is in the near future. And if it's up to me, though, I'd just stick to PC because mobile games are a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
In terms do you have a day job that you work, or is this your job?
This is my job. This is what I do for a living. I don't make a lot of money, and my girlfriend definitely, with her job, or excuse me, my fiance, definitely covers most of our bills, which is why I'm trying to turn some of these projects into money-making adventures. Right. But yeah, I mean, this is what I do full-time.
Right on. If you could go back and just know that you could have a different job that paid wild amount of money, would you change?
No, not at all. I mean, I've got offers for jobs that paid a lot more than this through my years doing it, but I only took what jobs I needed to survive while working on this, So, day jobs for a long time were the background job to me, and this is
the true passion project.
This is and that will. Looking at my parents who are, middle-aged and, wish they had done other things with their lives rather than falling into the well-paying, decent jobs they have now, I always decided that I was going to be a game developer, and that was it. No one was stopping me. Even if I made shitty money and barely kicked out any projects, that was still going to be better than having decent money and living a job I hated waking up for every day at the age of, 48,
How does the whole, kind of living based on what you're working on motivate you on these games? Does it make you work harder? Does it kind of stress you out?
It does stress me out a lot, but I mean, it doesn't make me work. I mean, I already work plenty hard because I'm trying to make these projects and get them done before I become bored with them. So I'm always facing my own timer because since I don't have for a lot of these games, I don't have my publishers and anybody breathing down my neck, so I can. If I have problems with a game or I don't want to work on it anymore, it's very easy for me to just stop, I mean.
Complete creative control,
Yeah, so, but I always try to push everything through to the end. Unless a game is coming out so bad that I don't think people will enjoy it, in which case I'll flat out stop. But, I mean, for the most part, I just work as hard as I can on every project I got under my wing and, hope it comes out as good as I imagined it in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I hope people like it as much, so.
For the works where you're borrowing heavily from other properties like Left 4 Dead or Halo or Team Fortress, are you able to monetize those as part of your job, or is those kind of just a love project? You do it for the love of the game?
Well, I mean, in one way I kind of wish I could, because Pixel Force Left 4 Dead got so many downloads, it was unreal.
Yeah.
It was by far and away my most downloaded game. I think it just passed the 1 million downloads, which that's a lot for an independent guy,
Yeah.
And Team Fortress Arcade did really well too. It's got 500,000 downloads. And I met with Robin for the first time at GDC this last year, and we started talking and we sat and we chatted. I showed him another project I was working on, and he's like, "Why didn't you ever contact us after you finished Team Fortress Arcade?" I said, "Well, I didn't want to bug you guys about it. It was basically just a fan game." He's like, "Well, didn't you want to make some money off it?" I was like, "Well, that would have been nice, but that wasn't the goal. I did it because I love Team Fortress 2, and I love you guys. And, he said, yeah, we could have worked out something where you could have, you sold it. And I was like,
Damn it.
damn it. I would have been so much. I'd have made like $300,000 off that game.
That's where you start seeing a little bit of red. You're just like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I wish you hadn't told me that.
And it's not a problem. We like your work. I'm like, fucking fun.
Well, Nathan, do you have any questions?
I guess, just one about kind of the multi-disciplined approach, like learning every single field. Like, is there, I guess just the internet in general is full of resources, but is there a specific, book or a specific website or resource or blog that you'd kind of cite as being most impactful?
No, I just pick things up all over the net. I mean, I wish I could give credit to every place and every video and everything I learned something from, but that would be a lot of places and videos, and
right. Okay.
I couldn't remember them even if I tried. But I mean, yeah, the internet's a beautiful, beautiful place, and everyone should take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess you've had people quit on you. Like, your advice would then just be like, don't do that. Stick to it. Finish the project. Like, if you're gonna do this thing, do this thing.
Well, that's sort of see, it's kind of hard to address stuff like that because I get people frequently. I get a lot of fan mail. I get fan mail almost every day, which is really nice. And they're all such nice, wonderful people. Most of them don't even speak English very well. But people will ask me all the time, will you work? I got a great idea for a game project. Will you work on it with me? And the reason I don't do that, aside from the fact that I'm clearly busy anyways, but the main reason I don't do that, aside from that, is people really, if you don't have the internal motivation to do it, you kind of never will. It's kind of, you're the kind of person that can spend all this effort and see something through to the end, or you're not and you need quicker results. If you're one of those people, then my suggestion for game development is find a specific thing you're good at in game development, like an artist or a musician or a producer or a designer or something, concept artist, whatever, and try and get a job with a company where that's basically all you do, because then your work will be in bursts, and you won't have to personally see through the whole project from beginning to end. Because if you don't have the drive, determination, and motivation to do it, then it's just never going to happen unless you have a team of people who can fill in all the gaps for you, which is how most companies clearly work. So,
right. Okay. Well, I think that's about it for this time around. Eric, if there's anything you want to plug where people can reach you, where can they do that?
You can go to my website, www.ericruthgames.com. It's spelled just as it sounds. You can also feel free to Google me. I'm sure you guys did prior to this interview, and there's plenty of stuff that pops up, so anything you might want to see or read about, other interviews, games you can download, it's all available all over the net, my friends.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to talk with us. I really enjoy what you're doing here with this whole new game, old era thing. As an NES boy myself, it's really kind of nice to see the games I love, like Halo, made in this style. I look forward to what you're going to do in the future here, and I guess we will talk to you. We'll keep in touch for sure.
Absolutely, man. Anytime you want to check in, feel free to poke me with a message. I'll be happy to respond.
Sounds good. And with
Thanks so much, fellas.
No problem.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.